Welcome back. Now for 6 News Update. You might remember there was some pushback when the Pottawattamie County Board of Supervisors decided to spend about $2 million in ARPA funds to buy the Mount Crescent ski area.
Well, today, county officials gave supervisors the results on how the ski area did in its first season. And as 6 News' John Chapman reports, the numbers surprised county officials.
Pottawattamie County officials hope to break even in its first year of owning the Mount Crescent ski area. Before the county opened the ski area, they spent some money upgrading power, buying machines to make more snow faster, and putting the focus on the customer.
We built a lot of trust with those people, and over the course of the season, it worked out that we ended up making more than our operating costs. We came out nearly $470,000 ahead.
Jeff Franco is Deputy Director of Pottawattamie County Conservation. He told the Board of Supervisors he thought they would have a good first season when he saw an increase in preseason sales.
We saw those sales jump up right away on October 1st, which told us that despite some of the controversy that we'd heard over the past year, the majority of the public was very much in favor of what we were doing, and they were really looking to support us.
Franco says the ski area brought in 99 seasonal jobs and helped the business community in and outside of Council Bluffs, especially down the road in Crescent, Iowa. Henry's Diner has been in business here for decades.
We did. We got a nice bump from them. It was nice to see the people up there. We got a lot of skiers, especially on Saturday mornings, Sunday mornings. A lot of people that would come before they were going to go skiing, eat breakfast, and then they would come and eat lunch.
But despite today's news, officials say there will always be some people who didn't like the way the deal went down, and they won't be happy about spending ARPA funds on a ski resort. But officials believe they spent the federal dollars the right way.
When you look at the needs that the COVID pandemic unearthed, that it highlighted, whether that's people's psychological, emotional needs, the need for more outdoor spaces to get away from people.
The ARPA funds were the big controversy, what we've done with them and invested them. There's a lot of county officials that tell me they wish they would have done something like we done with a number of different things, because their money's gone and they have nothing. And in 30 years, we'll still have what we have.
On your side in Pottawattamie County, I'm John Chapman, 6 News.
Pottawattamie County officials have hired a consultant to explore the potential of Mount Crescent, and officials believe the ski area could eventually be a four-season regional destination.